Hi there. It seems my hypocrisy knows no bounds. I was lamenting the other day about, pardon the cat, by the way, who's in one of her favorite spots. I was lamenting the other day with my wife about the fact that I think it's Gen Z now will select YouTuber as one of their top, if not their top choice for future occupation. What do you want to be when you grow up? Used to be truck driver, baseball player, pilot, soldier, fighter pilot, maybe astronaut, all those answers, business person, maybe that kind of thing. Now it's YouTuber, now it's influencer. Folks like me of the millennial ilk and older certainly have a lot of trouble with that. I continue to struggle with that despite watching all the wildly popular YouTube channels that my Gen A sons get into. Um, and now here I am, not just going live on YouTube for some weird reason, but scheduling it because I couldn't figure out how to just hit record in YouTube. And I don't have any video recording software available to me, which is fine. I certainly have a computer. I have this beautiful room, this beautiful office that I can record in. And I have company now. Our second cat is joining me, so he may be hanging out for the duration of this. The goal is not to take that long. To be honest, it's hard to explain. And so I'm not going to try to explain why I'm even doing this in the first place, except that I'm continually bothered by the subject. I wrote about it recently on Substack. I was going to write again a second installment, if you will. And then for whatever reason, I thought that the story that I want to tell as part of this is maybe better just coming from me face to face, if you will, face to face in a sense. And certainly not hiding behind words that I can edit and re-edit and revise. So I don't have too long, and just give me 1 second. Okay, don't mind that. All right. At any rate, I don't want to take too long with this. The last time I attempted to post videos, or I would post things on social media, it worried my family. It certainly worried my wife, and for good reason. And so I want to say first off, as a preface, that is not what this is. I used to post about leadership. I used to talk about things. Maybe some of it was helpful. I used to get not tons. I used to get a number of gracious comments from very kind people, most of whom friends, former colleagues, who said, I was saying things that were important or saying something useful. And that's all well and good. In a sense, this video is about leadership, but in a sense, it's in no way related to anything I used to do. I don't know. This is not a regular thing. I'm not starting a YouTube channel. God help me. I'm not doing that. Not taken back to the podcast circuit, I don't think. Anyway, I just want to tell you a story. And this is the best way I could figure out to do it. In 2011, I was 2 years into my ICBM alert tour. So I was a missile crew member at Minot, North Dakota, famous for its winters, famous at the time for the length of assignment you would earn just by being a regular Joe. So a lot of us had 5-year, if not 6-year tenures at the base. That was before the career field went through a bunch of changes, and shocker, the career field's going to go through changes again. Because we just can't figure out how to not beat the shit out of ourselves to death in that world, in the nuclear ops career field. If you're from the Air Force community, certainly if you're from the missile career field, you probably get what I mean. If you're not, then don't worry about it too much. It's probably one of the most important mission sets in the American military that you've never heard of. And maybe we'll talk about that some other time, but I'm not going to talk about it today. In 2011, Minot also was victim to its worst flood, something like a 500-year flood event, they called it. But I don't think that means it had been 500 years since a flood of that magnitude. It's just a way they use to measure how bad it is. So, a flood event created by a number of factors, primarily a ton of snow over the preceding winter, including up in Canada, which is where the very tiny Mouse River that wound its way through Minot was fed from, I think, two different reservoirs somewhere in Canada, northern Alberta, maybe, doesn't really matter. Southern Alberta, probably. In any event, tons of snow melt. The lakes were starting to rise. It was putting a lot of pressure on the dams. And it is the water coming through these dams that provided power. It provided a stable water location for water sports, recreation, right? Think camping and state park type things. And then it provided this stream, which was a small, very small minor river that ran through the northern US, including right through the city of Minot, North Dakota. 30,000, 35,000 folks in the town at the time. Huge military population. To this day, a very large Air Force presence and National Guard presence even in the area. At any rate, the flood was huge. My wife and I lost our house, but in the grand scheme, suffered very little, I would say. That might be contentious in my household. We did not suffer nearly as much damage as some of our friends. Some of our friends, no kidding, saw their entire houses submerged. Half of our house was submerged in water because it was on a hill. Down the hill from us lived a friend of ours and a colleague of mine whose house was literally submerged to the gutters, underwater. We had folks who lived in ranch houses that were completely inundated, houses that were completely destroyed. There were people in that town who had to walk away from their houses, literally walk away and not even foreclose deliberately. That foreclosure is a process that's painful that people can go through, I suppose, as a last resort. But there were people who just walked away, who just left their houses, framing, studs, everything all shredded and destroyed. And in some cases, they foreclosed. They said, I can't afford this, but I don't have insurance. Tons of people didn't have flood insurance because we didn't live in a flood zone, supposedly. So all these things were playing out. I think it was May of 2011. And you can imagine, especially at a time where the Air Force did not house single airmen, single officers on the base, we had plenty of young lieutenants living in town. Some married, some not, some with families, some not. And so on this particular day that I'm thinking of in 2011, I'm scheduled for an alert. I had been given a couple of days reprieve from the schedule to get my house in order, literally try to investigate the damage. And in our case, God blessed us with the chance to move on to the base. And we, it took about a year to redo the house, sold it, took a bit of a loss, but at the end of the day, came out quite well compared to some other folks, frankly. So at the time, though, I'm scheduled to go on alert. I'm feeling okay. The base house thing is going to work. We're staying with really good friends of ours, us, our dog, no kids at the time, thankfully. So that made things a bit simpler. I'm going on an alert and I'm standing on this half wall. For those of you who were, for those of you who were in my unit or know which unit I was in, you can probably picture this. I was standing against the half wall during the pre-deployment brief, somebody running through slides talking about what's going on that day. And just about everybody in the room is affected by the flood one way or the other. Even the senior folks that live on the base arguably are affected because their people are affected. And so I turn and I look at a friend and colleague of mine, another crew member, a young deputy at the time. We were both deputies, relatively new to the Air Force still, only a couple years in. And he's talking to the commander, to the squadron commander. So this is a lieutenant colonel who's been in the Air Force 15 years plus, I think, at this point. I, of course, have no intention of naming the individual, but some of you out there maybe, certainly if you know me or knew me then, you'd know who this was or who this is. But my buddy, the deputy, is talking to this lieutenant colonel, and my buddy is to my mind, distraught. He, if I remember correctly, was newly married, or at least was in a serious relationship, but no kids, thankfully. I think living on his own at the time, so not married yet. But his entire house was gone. Paid a mortgage as a second lieutenant. His entire house was gone, and he was trying to work out what to do. He was trying to figure out how to replace his clothing. His kitchen was gone. He had no food. Thousands of dollars in uniform items and items issued by the Air Force was also gone, because of course that's where we kept our things, were in our closets at home. He was not well. He was broken up. He was distraught. He's struggling, right? Like a lot of people were. And I remember among the few details I can recall, I distinctly remember him asking the commander, who's also the PRP certifying official, and that's another thing specific to nuclear ops, asking the PRP certifying official and also the squadron commander, sir, can I come down? Meaning, can I be suspended on PRP? I can't deploy today. My head's not in the game. And I'm paraphrasing, of course. I'm trying not to eavesdrop on this conversation, but while the pre-deployment briefing is happening, our squadron commander, the most senior individual in a unit of 100 or so, is having a conversation right here next to me and next to a bunch of us, where this crew member is saying point blank, like, I just can't think through this right now. Like, I'm struggling here. And nuclear ops is one of those things, right? If you're not initiated to the community, you would think we take your mental state very seriously. There is a little bit, at least when I came in, it's been a long time now, there's a little bit of a psych eval. They talk to you about, have you ever seriously considered the possibility that you would have to launch a nuclear weapon? They talk about concentration and focus on alert, not being distracted by issues at home or injuries or medical conditions, all these things. You get into the real world, and it's not quite so simple. And that's before a natural disaster. And so now the floods happened. So many people are out of their homes. Traffic is horrendous in the town because there was really only two ways to cross between the north and south part of town, and the river took out one of them. So every little things like traffic, it takes 3 hours to cross a town of 30,000 people, to my house is gone, like wiped off the face of the earth. That's what we're dealing with. Okay. I'm in a relatively good place. I can't, our house, we lost our house, but we were all alive, my wife and I and our dog. We were going to get a place on base, and it was going to be fine. We were going to spend a lot of money, and a lot of people had to spend a lot of money to fix their lives, but we were okay. I looked at this guy and I'm like, he needs time. He needs time, and he needs he needs a friend or two to just hang with him for a bit and talk through what he needs to go do. And then he needs help to go do it. And he wasn't the only one, but he was the one in the room at the time, struggling, having this conversation. Sir, can I come down? I can't deploy today. I'm sorry. And at this moment in time, in that community, for the most part, if you do that, if you ask for suspension, or if you come down, quote unquote, it's what we would call it, you're down on PRP, meaning you're not of a deployable status. If you come down, that means we're gonna burn, quote unquote, someone to replace you. We're gonna have to find someone to replace you, because we always have to pull the alert. We always have to deploy 24/7, 365. There's people out in the field right now, and that sucks. No one wants to quote, burn the backup, as we called it. No one wants to be that guy. Rarely you'll meet folks that really don't care, but like it's not common. At least it wasn't in my experience. For the most part, you feel icky. Even if you're legit sick, thrown up on the side of the road in no condition to deploy, like you don't like it. You don't want to have to cause somebody else to lose a day off the schedule, to have to deploy away from their family if they have a family. Nobody likes to do that. So for him to be asking, and in my mind, knowing who this is, for him to be asking is not easy. It's never easy on active duty to ask for help of any kind. Certainly if you are suffering mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It's very difficult. It's even more so difficult in a PRP environment where your whole livelihood is sort of based on this assumption of your mental stability. And it's even harder to ask of a commander who everybody knew by this point really didn't do people much. He wasn't a fan of people, let's say. But he asked, and I took that then, and I take that now to mean he didn't feel like he had much of a choice. And the commander, without wasting much time, because this all happened in front of us, said, "No, you're an officer. You took an oath. You're strong enough to get through this. We're all getting through this together. So no, I think you'll be fine." Of course, I'm paraphrasing. This was 2011, so what, 14 years ago. But I distinctly remember the commander almost dismissing the concern entirely, and perhaps because he wanted to build this guy up, this young lieutenant friend of mine. That is not what happened. Now, this lieutenant deployed. He didn't disobey the order. He didn't really have the means of disobeying. I don't think. This is the kind of commander that I think everyone believed would call security forces and have you arrested if you tried. So he deployed with us, and we all knew, like, it was quiet in the field because they're not deploying maintainers, and they were trying to keep the footprint at a minimum because everybody is trying to fix houses and support the base, taking on extra people and lodging and all these things. Operators have to go out, security, police, security forces have to go out, maintainers, no, not necessarily, didn't have to go out necessarily. And so it was quiet. And if I remember correctly, we didn't ask much of him, of this lieutenant who deployed. We were all just, we'll get through this together, right? We didn't want to ask anything of him. What sticks out in my mind are two things, and really the two reasons why I'm telling you this story, because I'm already 17 minutes in and haven't gotten to the point. The point is this: one, despite everything we knew about this commander, that he really didn't seem to care about people all that much, that he was really focused on however his career advancement was going to happen. And despite how difficult it is for anybody in our world to ask to be taken off the schedule, this guy asked and reached out and raised his hand and said, "Hey, I can't do this. I'm sorry. Can I be pulled off the schedule? Can I come down? And I need help and I need time." It was I would argue, you could certainly take issue with this. I would argue that was about as clear a sign or as clear an ask for help, a cry for help, as you would get in that environment. And the commander, almost without missing a beat, dismissed it and said, "No, you'll be fine. You took an oath. You'll be fine. Everybody here is dealing with it." Which on one level maybe is true, but this is why I emphasized early on, our house got flooded. A buddy of mine down the street got flooded, another active duty missileer. Tons of people in the town, civilians, military, enlisted, officer, all sorts of people, rich and poor, everybody. Just about everybody in the town is affected, whether they got water in their house or not. And tons of houses got water, like tons of houses, because tons of neighborhoods were built near the river. Because this thing was barely a river. It was a creek in places, right? Like it wasn't conceivable. Okay, so on one level, it's true. Everybody's dealing with this in a different way. Everybody's stressed. It's a rough time to be at Minot. It's a traumatic time. But he's asking one of the hardest things, one of the hardest requests to make as a missileer, and it's to come off the schedule. And the commander didn't entertain the conversation separately, didn't say, "Let's go to my office and chat and talk this out. Maybe once we talk it out, you'll be better and you can deploy later," right? Like even that might have helped, might have been a way for just vent all your frustration and come talk to me. Let's talk about it. Because arguably for some people, alert would be the better answer, right? It would distract you and you wouldn't be worried. There's all sorts of ways it could have played out. What played out is the commander saying, no, you'll deploy. Just like everyone else, you'll be fine. You took an oath and you're strong enough. And that was the end of it. And the guy was noticeably, and for obvious reasons, upset. So the first thing to understand is that that's what happened, or the first thing that you need to know. The second thing you need to know is that I did nothing about it. I certainly talked to this lieutenant afterward. We've talked since. I wouldn't say we're close. We're not good friends, close friends. I'm still in touch with him through social media, right? Which is to say, he and I see each other's pictures on our feeds from time to time. So we grew apart, just like a lot of people you meet when you're younger. But I also never confronted the commander. Respectfully, I could have asked him a question or two. I could have gone to a flight commander, right, which would have been a more senior officer in the unit. I could have gone to another squadron, potentially. I could have gone to any number of people. And in an official capacity said, hey, I don't think this individual should be on alert today. I have questions about his well-being. Like, I could have just said that generically. Because in theory, if I say that, you have to at least entertain the concern and then determine whether or not there's reason to suspend the individual and keep them from deploying so that we can care for them. I didn't do that. I don't even think I went over to him to comfort him or take care of him at the time. We talked later. But I didn't want to cross this commander. I didn't want to be in trouble. I probably at the time thought, well, God help me. I probably also thought, well, I lost my house too. Everybody lost their house. Like, it's easier for me to assume the worst possible train of thought in my head. Although I do remember at the time being surprised that my friend, my colleague, this lieutenant was dismissed that quickly by the PRP certifying official when asking point blank, please suspend me and take me off the schedule. So what's the point of this? 22 minutes in, right? What am I talking about now? Or what am I talking about this for? I'm still wrestling with what kind of environment you must be in, what kind of environment you as a leader must have cultivated, where people have so given up that they're talking openly about methods of suicide in the office, that they talk openly about suicide at all, that they talk openly about ending it, that they talk openly about wanting to get as far away from the job as possible. This is what it's like. This is what it's like in a lot of the places we work. I'm just going to say it that way. And this is particular to the government, particular to the military, and certainly particular to the Air Force. This is happening all over the place. I've seen it. I've also heard about it. And I have family and friends who have seen it and heard about it. So I wrote about this, about comments made in a previous AFMC commander's call. And it turned into a poem mainly because I was afraid that I shouldn't be saying some of the things that I had said in the original draft. Among them, the idea that blaming the president and the Secretary of Defense at this point is misguided. They're making decisions. Don't get me wrong. They're making decisions that are going to hurt people, that are hurting people, without a whole lot of regard of future consequences. But that's also kind of what the president was known for doing. And this is kind of exactly what he was hired for. This is what he campaigned on, advertised on. This is what he was hired for. Okay. But what I said in the previous version of the article that I didn't publish, it was a question. It was a rhetorical question, right? Because that's how I roll. And it was to ask, where are the folks who had been creating this environment for the last 20 or 30 years? Where are they now? Some of them are gone. Some of them are in the positions of senior leadership now watching this happen. But without being on the chopping block in some cases. Pete Hegseth was not Secretary of Defense 20 years ago, 10 years ago when I was on active duty. I don't know where he was. Frankly, I don't care. It doesn't matter. But there were senior folks, meaning general officers who were younger officers, senior NCOs who were younger NCOs, senior civilians who were previously active duty or younger civilians, planting the seeds that we are now reaping, watching our friends and colleagues not only get cut away from the force with little or no notice, but also being made to suffer mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And there's just something that gets me when somebody, we talk about cries for help. You see it on LinkedIn all the time. You see it in places, right? If you're in trouble, call. Here's the number for the suicide hotline, whatever. It's a fine message. The suicide hotline's important and it's there for a reason. But, on active duty, it's sort of a running joke, or at least it was in my circles. And to me, it still is, right? You ask for help or you express genuine struggle. And my response to you is, here's the link to one source. Well, you need to talk to somebody, find a counselor. Here's a link to one source. Plenty of resources online, blah, 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 blah. I'm saying what I'm saying because I need a human engagement. I need a human to help me through this. And your answer is go to a website. I realized as I was thinking through this, as I was wrestling with whether to even talk about this, let alone do this on YouTube for probably nobody. Whoever's going to watch this, it doesn't matter. I had to talk through this. I realized that when I was first trying to be a coach and I was trying to do the leadership thing and I was doing it for mostly the wrong reasons. I was talking about leadership to help people become better versions of themselves and units that can become more effective. And that's fine. Like, those goals are okay. But it's occurred to me over time that, like, if you're in a position to improve your leadership because your team can do better and do more, that's a luxury. At this point, we have leaders that can't even figure out what to do when their people would rather die and are okay talking about it versus work in your work environment. I know tons of people who wanted to click the button for deferred resignation or early retirement. Many of them could not for financial reasons, personal reasons, family. Some of them feel a dedication to the mission that they support or that they work, whatever, like all sorts of reasons that are personal to them, known to them and God and their family, perhaps, and that's it. I have no business knowing those reasons. The point is, I know that there are folks, I know folks that were ready to punch out, like they didn't care what the financial implication was. They just had to get away from it and were thankful for an open door. And some that really, truly, all they wanted was to walk through that open door, but felt like they couldn't. The common denominator is that I can't be absolute. It's not everybody, I'm sure, but a high percentage of folks that want nothing to do with this, that want nothing to do with the way you lead. And I'm saying you collectively, generically, because this is as much my fault as it is anyone else's. Because in 2011, I didn't do anything. I was an officer. I was a leader, right? We're all leaders individually. Yes, I believe that to some extent. But the point is, I was certainly taught that. And I think I believed it then. And yet I did nothing. I said nothing to anyone. I didn't push back. I didn't confront to the extent that I did later. It wouldn't have mattered because in the moment, that individual, that friend of mine, was asking for help and needed help in that moment. And I did nothing. That's the shit we're dealing with. And that's what's busted. That's the problem. We're ruining ourselves and we have brought hell to our doorstep. Like, you don't have to worry about going to hell or being sent to hell anymore. We've brought it right to our doorstep. We brought it into the workplace, creating environments with such bad leadership, such bad engagement and investment in other people, such a focus on whatever metrics you want to choose, whatever career advancement goals you yourself have as the commander or the director or the leader or the whatever. That is our focus now. So much so that we have completely lost sight of what it takes to do any of the things we say we do, which is the health and welfare of the individual human beings who do the things. Because no commander or director does the work, right? It's the team that individual is responsible for. That's the way it works. So if every single person on your team hates everything about what they do, or they hate their lives, or they feel stuck in this super deep rut, are you going to tell me now that that's their fault? Or you're going to say, well, here's a link to a website. Here's some resources. We'll get through this. Who's we? You've never listened to us. You do things against our advice and counsel. You're here for you, yourself, and you, and we're busting our asses anyway, because for whatever reason, we still believe in what we're doing. And then you'll fire me later because you're going to cut people anyway. So, you say I'm important until I'm not. Well, that's the message you send when somebody asks for help, when they cry for help to your face, and you say, no, you'll be fine. You took an oath. You're too important for me to take off the schedule. But, oh, by the way, a year from now, when we have too many people, you might be on the chopping block. So you're going to have to defend your very existence in a job come a year from now. But for right now, you're super important. Even just saying that out loud makes me wonder how any of us can be surprised at how badly this is going. None of us should be surprised. I least of all should be surprised at how my failures have manifested, to the extent that I had any influence in any environment I worked in, that my failures manifested in how bad it is now and how badly people feel. Just think about this for yourself. If you're in that position, if you know someone in this position, if you're in a position to affect other people's lives in any way, shape, or form, are you paying attention? Just pay attention. I don't know what else to say. I failed. We've all failed. But it's becoming increasingly difficult to stay quiet about it anymore. When people are talking openly about ending their lives, we have brought hell right inside our homes and our workplaces. And I mean that in a very real sense. Okay, it's been a half hour. I got to go anyway. So that's all I can say. Are you paying attention?